The moment my front door swung open, I knew something was wrong. No, I felt it. I had just come home from work, exhausted, expecting the usual, my wife, Olivia, on the couch, scrolling through her phone with that cold, detached look she'd worn for months now. But instead, the second I stepped inside, my brother, Jason, stood in the middle of my living room like he owned the place. He was shirtless, muscles flexing under the dim apartment lights, a smirk on his face like he had just won some twisted game. And Olivia? She stood beside him, arms crossed, lips curled in amusement. He's a weakling, Olivia, ditch him tonight. I'll show you what a real man is. Jason's voice hit me like a sledgehammer. For a second, my brain refused to process what I had just heard. My own brother? Saying that to my wife? And then Olivia laughed. Laughed. She turned to me, her eyes filled with nothing but cruel delight. Yeah, Ethan, she sneered, why don't you do yourself a favor and leave? Your stuff is already out in the hallway. I couldn't breathe. I took a step forward, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst through my chest. What the hell is going on? My voice came out hoarse, barely more than a whisper. Jason shrugged, stretching lazily like he had all the time in the world. Come on, man. You knew this was coming. Olivia needs a real man, not some pathetic excuse for a husband. A real man. A real man. My fingers clenched into fists, my vision tunneling. Olivia rolled her eyes and flicked her hair over her shoulder like this was nothing but a minor inconvenience. Look, Ethan, don't make this dramatic. Just leave. You can crash at some cheap motel or whatever. I felt like I had been thrown into a nightmare. This was my home. My wife. My brother. And then I saw it, the red marks on her neck. Jason's shirt carelessly tossed on the floor near the couch. The unmistakable scent of him lingering in the air. They didn't even try to hide it. Something inside me snapped. I lunged at Jason, grabbing him by the collar, shoving him back so hard he nearly tripped over the coffee table. He grinned, the same cocky, arrogant smirk he had always worn growing up. That's cute, Ethan, he chuckled, not even fazed. But we both know you won't do a damn thing. Olivia let out a dramatic sigh, completely unfazed by the fact that her husband had just walked in on her betrayal. You're embarrassing yourself, she scoffed. Jason's right. You're pathetic. I turned to her, my breath ragged. This is what you wanted? This? To throw away years of marriage for my damn brother? Her lips curled in a cruel smile. Jason knows how to take charge. You? You're just there. She said it so casually, like she hadn't just ripped out my heart and stomped on it. I looked at Jason, my own flesh and blood. And he just stood there, smug, waiting for me to crumble. I didn't. I turned on my heel, walked to the door, and glanced at my belongings scattered in the hallway. My clothes, my laptop, even my wedding photo, tossed aside like garbage. Olivia leaned against the doorway, smirking. Oh, and don't even think about calling me. We're done. Jason chuckled. Yeah, man. Just take the L and move on. For the first time in my life, I felt nothing but pure, ice-cold hatred. I didn't say a word. Not yet. I picked up my stuff, walked out, and slammed the door behind me. And as I stood in that hallway, fists clenched, heart shattered, only one thought burned in my mind. They think I'll just disappear. They have no idea what's coming. I stood outside my own apartment, my breath sharp and uneven, the weight of betrayal pressing down on me like 1,000 bricks. My fists clenched so tightly my knuckles turned white, but I forced myself to stay calm. They wanted a reaction. Olivia wanted to see me break. Jason wanted to feel like he had one. I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. I gathered my things, shoved what I could into my duffel bag, and left the rest on the floor. I wasn't thinking about where I was going, I just needed to get out of there before I did something I'd regret. As I stepped into the elevator, my reflection in the metal doors barely looked like me. My face was pale, my eyes dark and hollow. A man who just lost everything. The streets were cold, but I barely felt it. My mind was on fire, running through every interaction over the past months, trying to find the moment it all went wrong. Olivia had been distant. I had noticed it but convinced myself it was just a phase. Late nights at work, sudden mood swings, the way she barely looked at me anymore. And Jason, he had been acting strange too, always making little comments about how I needed to man up. I should have known. I should have seen it. I ended up at a cheap motel, the kind with flickering lights and the faint smell of cigarettes in the walls. I didn't care. I threw my bag on the floor, collapsed onto the bed, and stared at the ceiling. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I ignored it. I didn't want to talk to anyone. Not yet. Sleep didn't come. I kept replaying the moment over and over, the smirk on Olivia's face, the way Jason stood there like he had already replaced me. The sheer humiliation of it. My own brother. My own wife. Hours passed, maybe more. At some point, I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, my phone was vibrating violently on the nightstand. I groggily reached for it, my heart pounding when I saw the screen. 25 missed calls. Olivia's name staring back at me. I hesitated before unlocking the messages. Ethan, please answer. We need to talk. I made a mistake. Please just call me. I sat up, my pulse quickening. A mistake? The woman who laughed in my face last night, who threw my things into the hallway like I was a stray dog, was now desperate to talk? I didn't reply. I wanted her to squirm. The phone buzzed again, and this time I picked up. I didn't say anything. Just waited. Ethan? Oh my God, you answered. Olivia's voice was shaky, breathless, nothing like the cruel, arrogant woman from last night. I let the silence stretch. Listen, I need to see you. Can we meet? Please. I was drunk, I wasn't thinking. Jason, he's not who I thought he was. I messed up. I let out a bitter laugh. You weren't thinking? That's the best you've got. Ethan, please, she sounded panicked now. Jason, he's dangerous. You have to believe me. I clenched my jaw. Funny. Last night, he was your real man. Now suddenly he's dangerous. She exhaled sharply. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Just meet me, please. 1 hour. The diner on 8th. Please, Ethan. I'll explain everything. I should have hung up. I should have blocked her number and walked away forever. But I needed to see her face when I told her no. I needed to hear whatever excuse she was about to spin just to confirm how low she was willing to go. 1 hour, I said. I ended the call before she could say anything else. I had no idea what I was walking into, but I knew one thing, whatever this was, whatever she had to say, I wasn't the same man who walked out of that apartment last night. I arrived at the diner 10 minutes early, sliding into a booth near the window. The place was quiet, the kind of spot where tired waitresses poured coffee without a word, where people came to hide from their problems. My stomach twisted as I watched the door, waiting. Olivia was always late, always made a scene when she arrived anywhere, but tonight she rushed in like she was running from something. Her hair was messy, eyes wide and darting around as if she expected Jason to be right behind her. She spotted me and hurried over, dropping into the seat across from me. Her hands were shaking. Good. Ethan, she breathed, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. Her lips parted, but she didn't argue. You have 5 minutes, I said, my voice colder than I expected. She swallowed hard. I don't know how to say this. I messed up. I thought Jason was different. I thought she stopped, eyes glistening, but I wasn't going to fall for the fake tears. You thought he was better than me, I finished for her. Her jaw tightened. I thought he was strong, confident, the kind of man who takes what he wants. But Ethan, he's dangerous. You don't understand what I got myself into. I scoffed. Oh, now he's dangerous? Last night he was your perfect man. She flinched. I was drunk. I was stupid. I let him get inside my head. He told me you were weak, that I deserved better. I believed him. I was wrong. I leaned back in my seat, crossing my arms. You weren't drunk when you threw my stuff in the hallway. You weren't drunk when you laughed in my face. She let out a shaky breath. I didn't think you'd leave. I almost laughed. You thought I'd just stick around after that? That I'd fight for you? Her eyes darted around the diner again as if expecting Jason to burst through the door. He's not who I thought he was, she whispered. He's not just arrogant. He's unhinged. After you left, he changed. He started controlling me, telling me what to do, what to wear, who I could talk to. He took my phone. He locked the apartment door when he left, Ethan. He wouldn't let me out. I stared at her, my mind struggling to process what she was saying. He hit me, she finally admitted. Her voice was barely above a whisper. For a second, I felt something. A flicker of the old instinct to protect her. But then I remembered she did this to herself. She threw me away like trash for him. She chose him. And now, I said slowly, you want me to fix it? She reached for my hand again, desperation in her touch. I don't know what to do. I don't have anyone else. I pulled my hand away. That's not my problem. Tears welled in her eyes. Ethan, please, you made your choice, I cut her off. Now live with it. She opened her mouth, but before she could say another word, the door swung open with a bang. Jason. His eyes locked onto us immediately, his face twisted in fury. Olivia froze, her breath hitching. I turned my head slowly, meeting his gaze. He wasn't smirking this time. He looked like a man on the edge of losing control. You really couldn't help yourself, huh? Jason's voice was low, dangerous. I didn't move. Go home, Jason. He stalked closer. I let you walk away last night, Ethan. I was being nice. But now? You think you can meet up with my girl behind my back? Olivia let out a strangled sound. Jason, please, I just needed to talk to him. He grabbed her wrist, yanking her up from the booth. You don't talk to him. You don't talk to anyone unless I say so. I stood up. Jason turned his glare to me. Sit down, little brother. This doesn't concern you. I didn't move. Let her go. His grip tightened on Olivia's wrist, making her wince. Oh, now you care? Where was all this backbone last night? Let her go. The diner had gone completely silent. The waitress had disappeared into the back, the few customers still inside pretending they weren't witnessing this mess. Jason smirked, then suddenly shoved Olivia aside and lunged at me. I was ready. The moment his fist flew toward my face, I ducked, driving my shoulder into his ribs. He stumbled back, caught off guard, but recovered fast. He swung again. This time I didn't dodge. I caught his wrist midair, twisted it, and slammed him against the counter. Jason cursed, struggling, but I was done playing little brother. You took my wife. You took my home. You took everything from me, I growled. But you don't get to take my dignity. I let go, shoving him back. He staggered, breathing hard, rage burning in his eyes. You're dead, he spat. Get in line, I said flatly. He hesitated. For the first time, there was doubt in his expression. Then he turned and stormed out. I exhaled slowly, the adrenaline fading, my body shaking. Olivia was still standing there, staring at me like she had just seen a ghost. You should go, I said without looking at her. Ethan, please, go. She hesitated, then nodded. As she walked out of the diner, I finally let myself feel it. Not pain. Not regret. Relief. I sat back down, exhaling slowly, my hands still clenched into fists under the table. My knuckles ached, but I barely felt it. The diner's hum returned, clinking dishes, the quiet murmur of conversations, the scrape of a chair being pulled out. People pretended not to have seen what just happened, but I could feel their stolen glances, their hushed whispers. The waitress hesitated near my table, a pot of coffee in her hand. You okay? I nodded. Yeah. She poured the coffee anyway, sliding the cup in front of me before walking off. I stared at the black liquid, my mind still replaying everything. Olivia's shaking voice. Jason's rage. The way my own body had moved on instinct, no hesitation, no fear. For the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. My phone vibrated against the table. I didn't want to look. I already knew who it was. I forced myself to check. One new message. Olivia. Ethan, I don't know where to go. He has my things, my money, everything. I don't feel safe. I let out a slow breath. She wanted me to save her. The same woman who had thrown me away like trash less than 24 hours ago. The same woman who had laughed in my face while my brother told her I wasn't a real man. I placed the phone face down. Let her figure it out. I sat there for a while, finishing my coffee, staring at nothing. Jason wouldn't give up easily. He never did. He'd find some way to get back at me. I had to be ready. When I finally left the diner, the night air felt heavier. The city moved around me, headlights cutting through the dark, distant honks blending into the white noise of life moving forward. My motel room was cold when I stepped inside. The kind of cold that settled in your bones. I threw my jacket on the chair, pulled off my shoes, and collapsed onto the bed. The second my head hit the pillow, my phone buzzed again. I groaned, grabbing it, ready to shut it off. It wasn't Olivia this time. Jason, you have no idea what you just started. I stared at the message, my grip tightening around the phone. Jason wasn't bluffing. He never bluffed. But he had just made one mistake. He thought I was still the same man from last night. The man he humiliated. The man who walked out broken and defeated. I wasn't. I sat up, cracking my knuckles, a slow, cold smirk forming on my lips. Let's see what you've got, big brother. The night stretched long and restless, my mind wired with the weight of everything that had unraveled in the last 24 hours. Jason thought he still had control, that he could play his games and win like he always had. Olivia thought she could crawl back the second her fantasy turned into a nightmare. They were both wrong. I tossed the phone onto the nightstand, ignoring Jason's pathetic threat. If he thought I'd cower, he didn't know me at all. I had spent too long letting him push me around, letting Olivia walk over me like I was nothing. But now? I was done. Sleep never came. Instead, I lay in the dark, planning. Jason was reckless, but he wasn't stupid. He wouldn't come at me physically, not unless he knew he could win. He'd take another route, something underhanded, something that made me feel like I was losing control. By morning, I had made up my mind. I grabbed my phone and dialed the one person I knew would understand. Yeah? The voice on the other end was gruff, groggy, like I'd just woken him up. Nate, I need a favor. There was a pause. Then, a sigh. This about Jason? Yeah. Figures. I told you that guy was a walking pile of trash years ago. What happened? I hesitated for half a second, then let it all spill out. The affair. The way Olivia had thrown me out like garbage. The way Jason strutted around like he owned my life. Nate didn't interrupt, just listened. When I was done, he let out a low whistle. That's some next-level betrayal, man. Yeah, I muttered. And I know Jason. He's not done. Yeah, no kidding. He's always been a sore winner. Nate exhaled through the phone. All right, what do you need? Just some info. I know he's been up to shady stuff. I need something I can use against him. Nate chuckled. You always were too nice, Ethan. Jason's been dirty for years. Let me make some calls. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. Appreciate it. Stay sharp, man. Jason plays dirty, but we both know he's nothing without the people covering for him. We hung up and I leaned back against the headboard, staring at the ceiling. I had no intention of letting this drag out. Jason needed to be handled and I needed to make sure Olivia never even considered crawling back into my life. An hour later, my phone lit up with another text. I expected it to be Jason again, but when I checked, it was Olivia. I went back to get my stuff. Jason lost it. He's furious. I think he's coming after you. I stared at the message unimpressed. Let him. Another text. Please, Ethan. I have nowhere else to go. I laughed under my breath, shaking my head. You made your choice. Live with it. I didn't bother responding. By the time I left the motel, the city was already awake, the streets alive with movement. I had one goal today: finish this. I stopped by a coffee shop, grabbed something to keep me focused, and checked my phone again. No new messages from Jason, but Nate had sent me a simple text. Got something. Call me when you can. I stepped outside, hit dial, and waited. That was fast, I said the second Nate picked up. Yeah, well, it wasn't hard. Your brother's been racking up debts. Big ones. And not with the kind of people who forgive. I felt something shift in my gut. How bad? Bad enough that some very angry people are looking for him. Seems like your dear brother thought he could outsmart loan sharks. He's in deeper than he can handle and he's running out of options. I smirked. Good. Be careful, though, Nate warned. A guy like Jason, cornered? He'll lash out. If I were you, I'd be ready for anything. I will be, I said, my voice calm. We hung up and I exhaled slowly, rolling my shoulders. Jason was already drowning in his own mess, he just didn't know it yet. I had a choice to make. Let him self-destruct? Or give him the final push? I took a long sip of coffee, staring at the city moving around me. Jason was cornered, and whether he realized it or not, he was running out of time. The way I saw it, he had two choices: deal with the people he owed money to or come after me like the rabid dog he was. I wasn't about to wait for him to make a move. My phone vibrated again. Another text. Meet me. Alone. Same spot. Jason. I smirked. Of course, he wanted to talk now. He thought he could intimidate me, maybe throw some weak threats my way. He still thought I was the same guy who walked out of that apartment, stunned and broken. I wasn't. I typed back one word. Fine. The old diner on 8th felt different in the daylight. The fluorescent lights made everything look harsher, more real. I walked in, spotting Jason immediately. He was sitting in the same booth I had sat in last night, his foot tapping against the floor, a barely contained storm in his expression. He looked rough good. I slid into the seat across from him, resting my arms on the table. You wanted to talk, I said casually. Jason exhaled through his nose, his jaw clenching. You think this is funny, Ethan? I raised a brow. Yeah. Kinda. His fingers curled into fists. You shouldn't have met with her. She called me. You could have said no. I leaned forward slightly. She wasn't your girl when she called, was she? Already looking for an escape. What happened, Jason? You get bored of playing real man. His nostrils flared. You have no idea what you just did. I tilted my head. Oh, I think I do. And so do the guys you owe money to. The second those words left my mouth, Jason stiffened. His eyes flickered just for a moment, but I caught it. You don't know what you're talking about, he said, his voice dangerously low. Don't I? I leaned back, stretching my arms over the back of the booth. You think I didn't hear about the debts? The people looking for you? Tell me, Jason, what's it like knowing that any day now someone's going to come collecting? He laughed, but it was forced. You think you're so smart. You don't know anything. I smiled, slow and deliberate. I know more than you think. And I know one thing for sure: you're losing control. Olivia sees it. I see it. And soon, the people you owe are gonna see it too. His hand slammed down on the table, rattling the cups and silverware. A couple of people turned to look, but Jason didn't care. His face was twisted with rage. You think you can ruin me? He hissed. You think you can walk away from this untouched? I stayed perfectly still. I don't have to ruin you, Jason. You already did that yourself. His eyes burned with hatred, but I could see it now, fear. You've got nothing on me, he spat. I pulled out my phone, tapping the screen a few times before sliding it across the table. Jason's face drained as he read the text from Nate. A name. A number. A dollar amount way too big for him to ever pay back. His throat bobbed as he swallowed. Where did you get this? I shrugged. People like talking about you, Jason. You've made a lot of enemies. And not the kind that forgive. He shoved the phone back at me. His hands were shaking. I smiled. Now here's the real question, big brother. Do you want me as an enemy too? For the first time since I walked in, Jason didn't have a comeback. He knew. He had lost. I stood up, grabbing my phone, and looked down at him. This is over, I said. Walk away. Don't call me. Don't come near me. And don't even think about using Olivia as an excuse to crawl back into my life. Jason didn't move. Didn't speak. I turned and walked out of the diner, stepping into the bright morning light, breathing in the cool air. I had one. And Jason? He was already crumbling. I walked down the street, the weight on my chest finally lifting. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: control. Jason sat there in that diner, stewing in his own failure, and he knew there was nothing he could do. He had pushed too far, taken too much, and now his whole world was crashing down around him. I didn't feel bad. I didn't feel anything for him anymore. My phone buzzed again. I glanced down, expecting another desperate message from Olivia, but instead it was Nate. He's gonna try something. Watch your back. I smirked. Of course, Jason wouldn't just let this go. He was too arrogant, too blinded by his own ego to admit he had lost. He'd do something stupid. The only question was when. I spent the rest of the day moving smart. I knew Jason. If he wanted revenge, he wouldn't come at me directly, not right away. He'd find another way to get under my skin. And by nightfall, I got my answer. I was in my motel room scrolling mindlessly through my phone when a loud bang rattled the door. My body tensed immediately. Another bang. Then a voice. Open the door, Ethan. Olivia. I sighed, rubbing my temples before walking over. I cracked the door open, and there she was, mascara smudged, hair messy, eyes frantic. I didn't say anything. Ethan, please, she gasped. Jason's lost it. He threatened me. He said if I ever tried to leave again, her breath hitched. I don't know what to do. I stared at her. Not my problem. Her lips parted in shock. What? I leaned against the doorframe. You heard me. Tears welled up in her eyes. Ethan, please. I was wrong. I know that. But you're the only one I can trust. I almost laughed. The only one she could trust? She had Jason, and she chose him. She had me, and she threw me away. Now that her world was crumbling, she was back here, expecting me to clean up her mess. She reached for my arm. You don't understand, Ethan. Jason's dangerous. If you don't help me, Then go to the cops, I cut her off. She hesitated. Yeah, I smirked. That's what I thought. Jason was a bastard, but Olivia? She was just as bad. She didn't care about me. She didn't regret what she did. She just didn't like the consequences. Her face twisted, anger flickering behind the fake desperation. You're really going to let him win? He already lost, I said. And so did you. She blinked, stunned. I stepped back and shut the door in her face. I stood there for a long moment, breathing in the silence. No more second chances. No more Olivia. No more Jason. I was free. And nothing had ever felt better. I sat on the edge of the bed, listening. For a few seconds, there was nothing, just Olivia's shaky breath outside the door. Then came the sound of her feet shuffling away, her quiet sniffles fading into the night. I didn't feel bad. I didn't feel anything. I had spent years trying to be the good guy, the patient husband, the man who forgave, who worked through problems. But this wasn't a problem, this was a damn betrayal. And once someone shows you who they really are, you don't let them back in. I lay back against the pillows, exhaling slowly. Jason was still out there, stewing, plotting. Olivia was broken, desperate, realizing she had backed the wrong man. Not my problem. Not anymore. I closed my eyes, letting the exhaustion finally take over. I woke up to my phone buzzing. I groaned, grabbing it off the nightstand, squinting at the screen. One new message. Nate? You were right. Jason's spiraling. Be ready. I sat up, rolling my shoulders. My body still ached from the tension, but my mind was sharp. I typed back quickly. Let me know if he makes a move. I had a feeling I wouldn't have to wait long. I threw on a hoodie and stepped outside. The air was thick, humid, the kind of night that made you feel like something was about to happen. I walked to the diner, grabbed a coffee, and took a seat near the window, watching the street. 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I frowned, hesitating for half a second before answering. I didn't get a chance to speak. You think this is over? Jason's voice was low, almost too calm. I didn't respond. I let the silence stretch. You ruined my life, little brother, he continued. Took everything from me. I smirked. You did that yourself. He laughed, but it was hollow. You always thought you were smarter, didn't you? Thought you could walk away clean. I sipped my coffee. I don't think I know. A pause. Then his voice dropped lower. That girl at the front desk at your motel? Cute. Talkative. Gave me your room number real easy. Every muscle in my body tensed. I shot up from the booth, tossing cash on the table, already moving toward the door. Jason chuckled. Better hurry, Ethan. The call ended. I shoved my phone into my pocket and ran. By the time I reached the motel, my pulse was hammering in my ears. I took the stairs 2 at a time, rounding the corner, and stopped dead in my tracks. My motel room door was wide open. The lock was busted, the frame splintered. Inside, my stuff was trashed. Clothes thrown everywhere. My bag ripped open. My laptop smashed against the floor. But the thing that made my blood run cold? A single message written across the mirror in bold, red letters. You started this. I'll finish it. I clenched my jaw. Jason was desperate. That made him dangerous. I exhaled, rolling my shoulders, cracking my knuckles. I wasn't afraid. I was ready. I stepped into the room carefully, my eyes scanning for anything Jason might have left behind. The air was thick with that cheap motel smell, stale cigarettes, and cheap air freshener, but beneath it there was something else. Jason's scent. He had been here recently. I crouched down, picking up the pieces of my shattered laptop. He didn't just want to scare me. He wanted to erase me. Break anything that gave me control. Too bad for him, I didn't scare easy. I pulled out my phone, dialing Nate. He picked up on the second ring. Knew you'd be calling. He was here, I said, my voice low. Trashed my place. Left a nice little message, too. Nate exhaled sharply. He's getting sloppy. That means he's desperate. I smirked. Yeah, I figured that out when he called to brag about getting my room number. Wait, he called you? Jesus, he really is losing it. I stood up, pacing the small space between the bed and the broken desk. I need to end this before he does something worse. You know where he is? I stared at the mirror, at the red letters smeared across the glass. Jason wasn't hiding. He wanted me to come to him. I have a pretty good idea, I muttered. There was a pause on the other end. You sure about this, man? If you go after him now, there's no turning back. There was never any turning back. Nate sighed. All right. You need backup. I considered it for a second. Jason was reckless, but he wasn't stupid. If I went in alone, I could control the situation. If Nate came, things might escalate too fast. I've got this, I said. Be careful, Nate warned. Guys like Jason? They don't know when to quit. And if he's cornered. I know, I said. That's the plan. I ended the call and grabbed my jacket, shoving my phone into my pocket. Jason wanted to play? Fine. But this time I was ending the game. The bar on 12th Street was one of those places where people went to disappear. Dim lights, sticky floors, the constant smell of cheap whiskey. I spotted Jason the second I walked in. He was hunched over the bar, a drink in his hand, his knee bouncing restlessly. His face was twisted with frustration, his usual cocky confidence replaced with something else. Desperation. I walked up behind him, resting a hand on his shoulder. He stiffened, then turned. The second he saw me, his lips curled into a smirk. Well, look who finally grew a backbone. I pulled out the stool next to him and sat down. You done? He chuckled, shaking his head. Done? Nah, little brother. We're just getting started. I leaned forward, my voice calm. No, Jason. We're done. His smirk faltered for half a second, but he covered it with a laugh. And what? You think you get to decide that? I pulled out my phone, tapping the screen a few times before sliding it across the bar. Jason frowned, then looked down. His entire body went rigid. On the screen was a message from Nate. A photo of Jason's debt records. Every loan. Every missed payment. Every threat that had been made against him. Jason's face paled. I smiled. I don't have to do anything, Jason. But they will. His hand tightened around his glass. You don't understand, No, I cut him off. You don't understand. This isn't about Olivia. It's not about me. This is about you being a pathetic screw-up who thought he could take whatever he wanted. And now? You've got real problems. His jaw clenched. You wouldn't. I laughed. I don't have to. You already did this to yourself. His eyes flickered toward the door. He was panicking. Good. I leaned in one last time. You've got two choices, Jason. Run. Or deal with them. But either way, Stay the hell out of my life. He swallowed hard, his breathing shallow. I stood up, sliding my phone back into my pocket. As I turned to leave, I heard him exhale shakily. Ethan. I paused. He looked up at me, and for the first time in his entire damn life, he looked small. Fix it, he whispered. I shook my head. No, Jason. Fix yourself. And with that, I walked out of the bar, leaving him to the mess he created. The night air was cool against my face as I stepped onto the sidewalk. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt free. Jason was done. Olivia was out of my life. And me? I was just getting started.